He drank from the well that had slept for 1,000 years, sealed by time, cursed by silence. And when he did, his eyes changed, and something ancient woke beside him. The sun hammered down on Blake Turner's back as he trudged across the desolate plains of Theos. Once this world had thrived under alien skies, its cities alive with impossible light. Now it was nothing but dust and echoes. Blake, freshly assigned to the Exarchaeology Initiative, had drawn the short straw, a forgotten dig site far from the real discoveries up north. Weeks of work, and nothing to show but sunburn and frustration. He muttered under his breath, adjusting his hat as his scanner beeped lazily. Another thrilling day in paradise. The readings were all the same: rock, sand, disappointment. Yet as the afternoon dragged on, instinct pulled him away from camp, toward a jagged ridge that clawed at the sky. The ground here felt different, uneasy. His fingers brushed across a stone outcrop, smooth as glass where time should have left scars. That wasn't natural. At the largest of the stones, he noticed something. A faint, razor-straight seam cutting through the surface, too perfect to be coincidence. Heart quickening, he brushed away the dust and uncovered strange etchings, symbols that shimmered faintly under the twin suns. They weren't in any database he knew. Blake tapped his comm. "Dr. Vaughn, I think I found something at grid F112. Unidentified markings, possibly pre-collapse origin." Static crackled. "Turner, return to camp immediately. There's a storm heading your way." He glanced up. The sky was clear. "With respect, ma'am, this could be important." "That's an order," she snapped. "You found nothing in that sector for weeks. Get back now." He switched off the comm. He was done being the rookie who played it safe. Maybe this was nothing, or maybe it was the discovery that would prove them all wrong. The wind rose, carrying grit that stung his face. Blake worked fast, scanning the symbols and circling the stones. Then his boot caught something buried, and he hit the ground hard. Beneath the dust, a circular outline glimmered faintly blue. He brushed it clear with trembling hands. Smooth stone, carved with spirals that seemed to pulse as if alive. At its center lay a sealed cap. A well. But no well made by human hands. The wind howled now, turning the air into fire and sand. Blake reached for his marker, but his fingers brushed the seal, and it moved. A low hum rose from beneath the earth. The cap rotated, glowing brighter with every turn. Blake stumbled back as the light poured out like liquid sapphire, painting the storm in eerie color. That's not supposed to happen. The well was opening, responding to his touch after 1,000 years, and from its depths came a sound, not mechanical, not natural. Something was waking. The well did not hold water. It held light, liquid and alive. A luminous blue substance churned within, moving in patterns that made no sense to physics. It flowed upward along the walls as if gravity were optional, then spiraled back down in a silent, hypnotic rhythm. Blake stared, entranced. It wasn't water. It wasn't energy. It was something that seemed to exist between the two, fluid matter on the edge of reality itself. The wind screamed across the plains, the storm growing savage now, turning the desert into a howling blur. Blake had two choices: wander blind toward camp and die in the storm, or stay here, beside the impossible well. The decision was made for him when a violent gust slammed into his chest, nearly throwing him over the edge. He hit the ground hard, crawling into the shadow of the nearest stone pillar. Hours bled together. The storm didn't stop. His water was almost gone. Every breath filled his mouth with grit, and through it all, he could hear it. The soft, rhythmic whisper of the liquid in the well. It sounded like a stream from home, mocking his thirst. When night fell, the temperature collapsed. Theos's thin atmosphere offered no mercy. His teeth rattled under the emergency blanket, and his comm unit flickered dead from the fall. He was utterly cut off, alone under alien stars, and the well glowed brighter. The luminous liquid painted everything in an eerie sapphire light, calm and untouched by the storm. It was almost beautiful. almost welcoming. Blake caught himself staring at it too long, the way a drowning man watches the surface. "Don't even think about it," he muttered. "Unknown compound, sealed containment, might as well drink jet fuel." But the hours dragged on, and thirst clawed deeper. His logic frayed. There were no hazard markings, no warnings, only intricate carvings that looked reverent, ritualistic. Maybe this wasn't a weapon or a trap. Maybe it was meant to sustain life. By midnight, delirium had set in. His lips were cracked, his throat raw. He crawled toward the well, goggles fogging with dust and breath. As he neared, the liquid stirred, its motion quickening, colors shifting from blue to violet to molten silver. For an instant, he thought he saw symbols flicker in the glow, letters of light that vanished before he could blink. "This is insane," he whispered, but he didn't stop. He fumbled a sample vial from his pack, thinking at least he could record what killed him. The moment the glass touched the liquid, it crumbled to powder, dissolving into the glow like sugar in fire. Blake froze, then looked at his hand, unharmed. The droplets that had splashed his skin felt warm, comforting. Certain death from dehydration or possible death from discovery. The math was simple. "For science," he muttered, laughing hoarsely. He dipped his hands into the well. The liquid felt impossibly smooth, shifting like silk, curling around his fingers as though aware of his touch. And before fear could catch him, he drank. It was like swallowing light, cool, then warm, tasteless, yet alive. The sensation spread through him in waves, igniting every nerve. His fatigue vanished. His thoughts sharpened to a blinding clarity. Then came the pain. It struck behind his eyes, pressure that grew into pure agony. He fell to his knees, gasping, the world splintering into kaleidoscopic fragments, patterns, symbols, equations that burned themselves into his vision. He saw things he couldn't comprehend, yet somehow understood. He screamed. Then it stopped. The silence that followed was worse. When Blake opened his eyes, everything had changed. The storm still raged, but he could see through it. The dust shimmered, translucent. The rocks pulsed faintly, each one humming with energy he could now perceive. And the well was no longer just a hole in the ground. It was a nexus, a living network, its tendrils stretching into the planet, into the sky, into the stars. Blake staggered to his feet, breath ragged, heart hammering. He hadn't just found something ancient. He had awakened it. Blake looked down at his hands. At first glance, they seemed normal, until he noticed a faint blue glow pulsing just beneath the skin, tracing the map of his veins like liquid fire. "Remarkable, isn't it?" The voice came from behind him, calm, melodic, and wrong. It carried harmonics no human throat could create, resonating like a chord struck inside his skull. Blake spun, stumbling backward until his heel met the edge of the well. A figure hovered a few inches above the ground. It was shaped like a person, but its body was composed entirely of that same luminous substance from the well, flowing and shifting like smoke trapped inside glass. Despite the lack of a face, Blake felt it was smiling. What are you?" he demanded. "I am a Lyron," the being replied, "once chief archivist of the repository of collective memory." A ripple of faint humor flickered through its form. "Though by your standards, I suppose you would call me a ghost." Blake stared, dumbfounded. "A ghost," he repeated. "Right, that makes sense. I've officially lost my mind, hallucinating after drinking from an alien well." "Not a hallucination," Eliron corrected gently, drifting closer. "And not precisely a ghost in the way your culture defines the term. I am an imprint, a consciousness preserved within the mnemonic matrix you just activated, one of many scattered across Theos." Blake's rational mind fought to assemble the impossible pieces. "You're an AI? A recording?" Eliron's outline shimmered, as if amused. "Those words are crude approximations. I am a Lyran. My memories, personality and identity woven into light and thought. Not alive in your biological sense, but not a mere machine either. Blake rubbed his eyes, which still throbbed faintly. His vision was sharper now, layered, as though he were seeing wavelengths that had never existed before. What did the well do to me? It established a connection, Eliron explained. The mnemonic wells were designed not merely to store knowledge, but understanding. They restructure neural pathways, allowing your species to perceive and comprehend concepts beyond your natural limits. Your visual cortex has been adapted to sense aspects of reality that were once invisible to you. Blake's pulse quickened. You altered my brain? You initiated the process, Eliron replied calmly. The changes are beneficial and temporary for most species, though I must admit, your human neuroplasticity is exceptional. The adaptation occurred far faster than predicted. Blake drew a slow, shaking breath. If this was real, and every instinct told him it was, then he was standing at the threshold of something humanity had never encountered, a true, conscious remnant of an extinct alien civilization. Why were you sealed inside the well? He asked, curiosity overtaking fear. Eliron's form became clearer, as though memory itself gave him shape. I chose to transfer my essence during what we called the Great Diminishing. Many of us did. We wished to preserve our knowledge for those who might come after. The wells were sealed to protect what remained from the forces that were unmaking our world, and to ensure only those capable of understanding would awaken us. The Great Diminishing, Blake echoed. That's what wiped out your civilization? History shows only a sudden collapse. No explanation. Yes and no, Eliron said quietly. His form flickered, edges dissolving like fog in sunlight. It was not one event, but the consequence of our greatest triumph and our greatest sin. He raised an arm, and the air shimmered with projected memories. Ghostly visions unfolded around them, impossible cities of fractal geometry, devices bending space like liquid, beings of light moving through shifting dimensions. We learned to manipulate the boundaries of reality itself, Eliron said. We reached beyond the walls of existence, and something reached back. We thought we had ascended, that we could transcend form. Many succeeded, transferring their consciousness to what you might call higher dimensions. But in doing so, we weakened the barrier between worlds. Things began to bleed through. Entities with intentions beyond reason or morality. The laws of nature fractured. We could not adapt fast enough. The visions darkened. Towering structures collapsed into spirals of light. Landscapes melted and reformed. Beings screamed as they dissolved into the ether. Those of us who saw the truth built the wells, Eliron continued. Each a vault of warning and wisdom. We sealed them and marked their locations, hoping that one day another civilization would uncover them and learn before repeating our mistakes. Blake's blood ran cold. You're saying humanity could face the same fate? Not yet, Eliron replied. The breaches have long healed. But the knowledge that destroyed us remains, hidden, scattered across this planet in relics and ruins. And your species, the figure's tone softened, almost pitying, has a dangerous talent for progress without patience. Outside, the storm was fading. The first light of dawn broke through the thinning dust, painting the alien desert in shades of violet and gold. Blake realized his colleagues would soon be searching for him, and for this sight. He looked back at Eliron, voice hushed with awe. I need to report this. This changes everything we thought we knew about Theos, about your people, about us. Eliron's glow dimmed slightly, like an ember flickering in the wind. Be careful, Blake. Knowledge is the purest light and the fastest way to burn. I understand your excitement, Eliron said, his glow dimming like a fading star. But I must caution you, Blake. Knowledge itself is neither good nor evil. Its danger lies in how it is used. What I can share could elevate your species, or doom it, as it did mine. Blake's pulse hammered in his ears. His discovery had just become something far heavier than scientific triumph. The warning lingered in his mind like a cold shadow, yet excitement burned just beneath it. If the Theosians had destroyed themselves through arrogance, perhaps this was humanity's chance to learn from their fall. Still, could he really keep something like this secret? To bury knowledge was to betray everything science stood for. "What exactly can you share?" he asked, forcing calm into his voice. "And what happens now that the well's open?" Eliron's form shimmered faintly. "Now that the connection is established, I can communicate with you as long as you remain near the well. The knowledge within, the distilled essence of our civilization, can be transferred slowly, safely. But what you choose to learn, and what you choose to reveal, must be your decision." Blake ran a hand through his dust-caked hair. "That's not a choice I can make alone. There are protocols, ethics boards, entire treaties about first contact and alien technology." Eliron inclined his head, a flicker of what might have been approval rippling through him. "A commendable approach. Perhaps your species has more wisdom than I dared hope. But remember this. Now that the well is active, its energy will draw attention. Instruments at your camp will detect it. You cannot simply reseal it and walk away." Blake's heart sank. Eliron was right. Once the storm cleared, every scanner within 50 kilometers would pick up the anomaly. Word would spread. Governments, corporations, everyone would come running. "I need time," Blake said quietly. "Time to think, and a way to explain this without starting a panic or a gold rush." "Time," Eliron mused, that ghostly smile returning, "is one thing I have in abundance. But before your people arrive, there is something you must see, so that you understand the weight of what you found." The being gestured toward the well. The luminous liquid rose, swirling upward in a graceful column before expanding into a perfect sphere of light that enveloped them both. Images formed in the air, this time not memories but visions.
Blake gasped. He saw Earth unmistakable from orbit, though the coastlines were subtly altered. The view plunged closer, to a vast research facility alive with human activity. Men and women in lab coats clustered behind thick glass as a machine powered up in a central chamber. Its design bore unmistakable echoes of Theosian architecture. The air within the chamber twisted, ripping open into a vortex of impossible color. Reality bent. Something emerged from it. Something that refused to hold a stable shape, its geometry flickering across dimensions Blake couldn't comprehend. The scientists screamed, but the entity expanded outward. Where it touched matter, reality rewrote itself. Humans didn't die. They transformed, folding into alien structures that pulsed like living equations. The vision zoomed outward, showing the infection spreading, cities warping, continents unraveling, the planet itself twisting into something that was no longer Earth. When the vision ended, the desert was silent. "This," Eliron said softly, "is what your scientists might call a probable timeline. One of many possible futures. But this one grows increasingly likely if your kind continues to pursue certain technologies without understanding their true nature." Blake's stomach turned. "You're showing me the end of humanity." "A possible end," Eliron corrected. "One that can be avoided with restraint, patience, and wisdom. The knowledge in these wells can heal your world, clean energy, medicine, longevity beyond imagining. But misuse it, and your reality will unravel, just as ours did." Blake stared into the glowing depths of the well. Its blue light no longer felt wondrous. It felt alive, watching him. "How do I know you're not manipulating me?" he asked quietly. "You could be showing me whatever future suits your agenda." "A fair suspicion," Eliron admitted. "I cannot prove my motives are pure, just as you cannot prove that humanity will act responsibly. We each must decide how much trust to give, despite incomplete understanding. That, perhaps, is the true test of sentience." The first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, painting Theos in amber light. In the distance, Blake heard the low hum of approaching vehicles, his rescue team. He turned back to the spectral figure. "I won't lie to them, but I also won't let this be exploited. We'll study it carefully, slowly. Would you be willing to speak with them, as you've spoken with me?"
Eliron's form shimmered thoughtfully. I can only commune with those who drink from the well, those whose minds form the link. But be warned, the connection changes each individual differently. Some adapt, others do not. Blake nodded grimly. Then I'll make sure they understand the risks before anyone else drinks. We'll take this one step at a time. A wise compromise, Eliron said. His glow faded, his form becoming translucent. I must conserve energy now, but know this, I will be watching. Even when unseen, I remain. The sound of engines grew louder. Dust kicked up on the horizon. Blake knelt, gathering his scattered tools, his thoughts a storm more violent than the one that had passed. As he slung his pack over his shoulder, one final thought hit him, a realization that chilled him to his core. If Eliron had shown him a possible future of Earth, then humanity's path toward that destiny had already begun. "Aaron," Blake called out, his voice echoing softly through the ancient chamber. "You said the wells are scattered across this planet. How many exist?" The spectral figure hovered in the pale light, its outline fading like smoke in a breeze. 12 major wells, Aaron replied at last, its tone solemn, each one holding a complete archive of our civilization. And hundreds more, minor wells, repositories of specialized knowledge, all sealed until touched by a consciousness capable of awakening them. Blake hesitated, the implications crashing over him like a tidal wave. "And are there others like you? Other preserved minds?" The spirit's glow dimmed further. "Yes. Each major well contains a guardian, one who volunteered to remain behind as a bridge between what was and what may come. We have waited a very long time, Blake Turner." With those final words, the apparition dissolved into the air, leaving only a faint shimmer above the still surface of the well. But Blake could feel it, an invisible presence watching, waiting. A planetary network of alien intelligence and technology, an entire civilization's legacy, hidden in the dust of a dead world. The thought was staggering. The first expedition vehicle crested the ridge, tires grinding against loose stone. Dr. Vaughn sat in the passenger seat, relief flashing across her face before it shifted to confusion. The structure before her, impossible, luminous, unmistakably artificial, hadn't appeared in a single survey. As the vehicle stopped, Blake raised a trembling hand to his face. His vision still shimmered with lines of energy, threads of connection only he could see. But something deeper had changed. His understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos had been rewritten. They were not alone, and they were not the first. "Turner!" Vaughn shouted, leaping from the vehicle. "We thought you were dead. What the hell is all this? Why wasn't it in our scans?" Blake took a steady breath, every word a choice that could shape the fate of his species. "What I found," he said slowly, "will change everything we thought we knew. But we have to move carefully. This isn't just archaeology, it's first contact." Vaughn blinked, stunned. "First contact? The Theosians have been extinct for 1,000 years. Blake managed a faint smile. "That's what we thought too." He turned toward the others emerging from their transports, their eyes wide with awe. "We'll need protocols, strict ones. No one touches the well until we understand what we're dealing with." Vaughn stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Your eyes," she whispered. "They're glowing." "I know," Blake murmured. "That's part of what we need to discuss." More vehicles arrived, carrying scientists and technicians. The site buzzed with tension, wonder, and the faint hum of something alive beneath the ground. Blake could sense Aaron's unseen gaze hovering like a guardian or a judge. The knowledge in the wells could raise humanity to godhood or reduce it to dust. The weight of that truth settled heavy on his shoulders. He had been the first to drink, the first to see, the first to understand. And now, the burden of that knowledge was his to bear. As the team gathered around, Blake began to speak, his words marking the beginning of something vast and irreversible. The rising sun washed the alien site in gold,
its light revealing a truth older than humankind itself. Theos had waited 1,000 years for rediscovery, and now humanity stood at the same precipice that once doomed another world. Would they learn or repeat history? As Blake's voice carried across the camp, the question hung in the air like a prophecy. Weeks passed. The excavation transformed into a fortified research outpost under the Exorca Initiative. Governments moved quickly, deploying specialists from across the planet. Dr. Vaughn, once skeptical, became Blake's fiercest ally after she, too, drank from the well. Her transformation was different. While Blake's vision allowed him to perceive energy and life itself, she gained an intuitive grasp of alien mathematics, seeing equations as living, shifting forms.
"It adapts," Blake explained one night in the command center, surrounded by glowing monitors. "Elrond said the well identifies what your mind is best suited for and amplifies it. Not random," Vaughn added, adjusting a holographic formula that pulsed like a heartbeat. "It's teaching us, each one of us, a specific piece of the puzzle." But not everyone was convinced. "Teaching us?" scoffed Dr. Miles Harper, the team's xenobiologist. "It's rewriting us. You're talking about an alien substance altering human neural pathways." The debate grew heated, echoing through the metallic halls. Between promise and peril, between discovery and destruction, humanity stood on the knife's edge of evolution, and no one knew which way they would fall. Turner's and Van's innovations seemed like miracles now, breakthroughs that redefined human capability. But Dr. Vaughn's voice carried the unease no one dared speak aloud. "What about a year from now? 5 years? We have no baseline for this kind of xenobiological interaction." Blake knew she was right. The migraines, the flashes of sensory overload, the way his mind now caught whispers of energy patterns even in the dark. It was all proof that the human body was still learning to coexist with something far beyond evolution's design. Still, the knowledge felt worth the pain. The real storm wasn't biological. It was political. Word of Theos and the well of knowledge had reached Earth. Governments and megacorps were circling like vultures, each desperate to claim the discovery that could rewrite civilization. Some said Theosian technology could end climate collapse, cure disease, power entire nations. Others feared it would shatter the global balance overnight. "The vultures are circling," Dr. Vaughn muttered grimly as data scrolled across her console. "The UN's frozen in deadlock. 3 nations are threatening to send their own expeditions if we don't share access." Blake rubbed at his temples, feeling that now familiar hum beneath his skin, the energy web that bound the wells together across the planet. He'd seen strange fluctuations in it lately, almost like the system itself was reacting to human interference. "Elrond warned me this would happen," he whispered. "Knowledge without wisdom, power without restraint." Vaughn glanced over. "Speaking of our ghostly friend, he's been quiet. Has he spoken to you this week?" Blake shook his head. "Not directly. He's near the well, just watching, waiting." "For what?" "To see what we decide, whether we treat this as a gift or as a weapon." 3 days later, the decision was made for them. A corporate expedition touched down, soldiers, scientists, and suits, claiming international jurisdiction over humanity's shared heritage. They built a fortified camp less than 2 kilometers from the original site. The message was clear. They wanted the well, and they weren't asking permission. Blake watched the live satellite feed with dread. This is exactly what Elrond warned about, greed without understanding. A young archaeologist, Sean Whitaker, asked nervously, "What's the worst that could happen?" Blake turned, the blue light in his irises pulsing like lightning. "The worst? Theosians nearly erased their entire reality by doing exactly this. We could do it faster, because humanity always does." Tension escalated fast. The corporate team began scanning for nearby anomalies, certain they'd found another well. Meanwhile, Blake's group raced to interpret Theosian warnings with Elrond's guidance. "The knowledge is meant to be unlocked in sequence," Blake explained to Vaughn. "If different groups activate different wells out of order, they could trigger something catastrophic." Then, alarms. The corporate convoy was moving. straight toward them. Vaughn's face went pale. They've detected the energy surge from our well. Blake didn't hesitate. Get everyone back. I need to speak to Elron. Now. By the time he reached the crater, the blue liquid within the well was swirling violently, glowing brighter than ever. Dust clouds on the horizon marked the approaching vehicles. Blake's voice echoed through the chamber. Elron, I need your counsel. They're coming, and they won't listen. The spectral figure materialized, sharper and more focused than ever before. I know. They seek power without comprehension. A dangerous mix. Once a well is opened, it cannot be sealed by ordinary means. Then what do? There are emergency protocols, Elron said, his form flickering like starlight. The wells are connected, the knowledge can be hidden, redistributed, but such actions require a living conduit, a mind already linked to the archives. Blake's heart sank. You mean me? Your connection is strong, your intent pure, but this path will change you forever. You will become the guardian, a living key to the archive, human still but intertwined with knowledge itself. The convoy was less than 10 minutes away. The roar of engines trembled through the ground. Blake stared into the well, feeling it pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. And if I refuse? Elron's glow dimmed. Then humanity will repeat Theos's fall, only faster. The fracture you've seen in your visions were doing yours will no longer be a warning. It will be a countdown. Blake's mind raced. Earth's future, his friends, the fragile balance between discovery and destruction. He took one final breath. What do I need to do? Elron's voice softened, almost reverent. Return to the well. Immerse yourself completely this time. Not just a sip, a full communion. The process will be overwhelming, but I will guide you. And as the first echoes of engines reached the rim of the crater, Blake stepped toward the swirling light. Humanity's last hope and its greatest gamble. Blake stood before the shimmering pool, the liquid light rippling like a living heartbeat. Full immersion, terrifying, inevitable, felt less like a choice and more like destiny. Every step, every discovery had led him here. Blake! Dr. Vaughn's voice cut through the roar of distant engines. She was sprinting from the command center, breathless. The corporate team's armed. They're demanding full access to our data. Harper's trying to stall. She stopped cold, her eyes locking onto the luminous figure beside the well. What is that? Blake wasted no time. He told her everything, Elron's warning, the threat of misuse, the only solution left. Vaughn's expression darkened with disbelief. You can't be serious, she whispered. Permanent neural alteration, becoming some kind of alien gatekeeper. Blake, that's not a decision you make in 10 minutes with guns pointed at you. He met her gaze steadily. If there were another option, I'd take it. But you've seen what happens when this knowledge is mishandled. The Theosians almost destroyed themselves. We could do worse. Then destroy the well, she pleaded. Bury it, end it. Better to lose the knowledge than risk everything. Elron's glow pulsed sharply. Destruction is impossible by physical means, he said. Any attempt would release catastrophic energy, akin to a dimensional rupture. The engines outside grew louder, closer. Time had run out. Vaughn's hand closed around Blake's arm, her voice trembling. I trust you. Whatever you decide, I'll stand by it. Just be sure. Blake looked at her one last time, then toward the advancing convoy cresting the ridge. Want this? No, but it's necessary. He stepped to the edge. The liquid reached for him, tendrils of light wrapping gently around his legs. If this goes wrong, he murmured, tell them I'm sorry. And before she could speak, he stepped forward and disappeared beneath the surface. The well swallowed him whole. The blue light folded over his body, and the world fell silent. He did not drown. He expanded. Breathing became meaningless as his consciousness stretched across an infinite lattice of energy. Elron's voice echoed within him, not as words, but as understanding. He saw everything. 11 great wells and countless minor nodes, all pulsing with knowledge, with memory. Theos unfolded before him in breathtaking clarity, its energy web glowing like veins of living fire beneath the planet's skin. He could read it now, the logic, the purpose, the safeguards. And he understood how to protect it, how to weave a new pattern, one that allowed learning, but prevented ruin. This was not power to possess. It was trust to preserve. When Blake emerged, only minutes had passed. Yet his body carried the stillness of someone who had lived centuries. Faint blue light shimmered beneath his skin, and the once subtle flecks in his eyes had become intricate glowing sigils. "Blake," Vaughn whispered, awe and fear blending in her voice. "Are you still you?" He smiled faintly. "More than ever. I understand it all now. The Theosians, the archives, what must be done next." The convoy had arrived. Corporate soldiers fanned out, rifles at the ready, while executives approached with self-assured calm. Their leader, a woman with a cold, composed face behind her helmet, stepped forward. "Dr. Turner," she said crisply. "I'm Dr. Elena Mercer, Chief Research Officer for Quantum Horizons. We're here under international oversight to secure this site. Please, step aside." Blake stood firm between her and the well. "The wells aren't technology," he said quietly. "They're a covenant and a warning." Mercer frowned. "Your eyes." She gestured to her guards. "He's been compromised. This is exactly why containment protocols are required. Secure him for medical evaluation." Two soldiers advanced, weapons lowered but ready. Blake didn't move. "I wouldn't," he said softly. The ground trembled. All around the excavation site, the stone pillars that once framed the well ignited with the same blue luminescence. Lines of energy flared outward, forming a protective ring. "The wells are under protection now," Blake said, his voice resonant and calm. "Access will only be granted to those who approach with the right intent, and the patience to earn understanding." Mercer took a step back, eyes wide. "What have you done?" "I've accepted responsibility," Blake answered. "Something your employers should consider. These archives could save humanity. Clean energy, disease eradication, even faster than light travel. But misused, they'll end us faster than any weapon ever could." "You have no authority here," Mercer snapped. "This isn't about authority," Blake replied. "It's about trust. The Theosians left this knowledge for whoever found it, to use wisely. I'm making sure that trust survives." The air shimmered, and then, before every stunned observer, Elron appeared, visible, radiant, and undeniably real. The soldiers froze, raising their rifles instinctively. Mercer's voice dropped to a whisper. "What is that?" "A guide," Blake said, his voice steady but resonant with something deeper now. "One of many preserved minds within the archive network." He turned toward the spectral figure. "Elron, would you explain to our guests why caution is necessary?" The ghostly being stepped forward, its once translucent form now solidifying, radiant with quiet power. When it spoke, its voice wasn't sound. It was vibration, resonating through the air and the bones of everyone present. "Your species stands at a crossroads," Elron began. "The knowledge contained within these wells represents both salvation and ruin. My people learned this lesson too late. We reached beyond our grasp, ascended to unimaginable heights, and fell when our ambition outpaced our wisdom." As Elron's words spread through the excavation site, the air shimmered with visions, a golden civilization blooming across Theos, radiant cities built upon energy and thought. Then, collapse. Reality twisting, matter unraveling, dimensions tearing apart until everything dissolved into silence. The ground seemed to hum with the memory of it. "We remained," Elron continued, "to ensure that no other species repeated our mistakes. The archives are not meant to be conquered. They must be learned, one principle at a time. There are no shortcuts, only consequences." The projections faded, leaving stunned silence in their wake. Dr. Mercer's face was pale, her earlier arrogance stripped away. "How can we know this is real?" she asked. "It could be manipulation, a scare tactic, holographic fear-mongering." Blake gestured toward the glowing well. Then see for yourself. Drink from the archive. But understand, this isn't power to take. It's responsibility to bear. Mercer hesitated, torn between scientific hunger and existential fear. What are you suggesting, Dr. Turner? A unified approach, Blake said firmly. One expedition, shared research, transparent access for all humanity, but guided, structured, safeguarded. The archives themselves will determine the pace of learning, as they did for the Theosians. No more competition, no more greed. What followed was a night of negotiation lit by the pulsing blue glow of the well. Voices clashed, doubts flared, but by dawn, an uneasy alliance was born. Both expeditions agreed to merge, every finding to be reviewed by an international council, every application monitored. Not all were satisfied. Some whispered that Blake had made himself the gatekeeper of humanity's future. Others feared Elrond's influence, wondering whether humanity was truly still in control. Blake understood their fears and shared them, but he knew the alternative was far worse. Months passed. The barren plain of Theos transformed into a living research colony. Towers of light and energy conduits pulsed with alien rhythm. Humanity had begun to learn, cautiously but brilliantly. Clean energy systems powered by well principles, molecular medicine rewriting disease, new materials bending the limits of physics. Watching it all, Blake felt a strange blend of pride and apprehension. You were right, he told Elrond one evening as they stood by the original well, its light reflecting softly in his altered eyes. Knowledge without context is lethal. But maybe, just maybe, humans can learn from others' mistakes, not just their own. Elrond shimmered with something that might have been approval. Your species continues to surprise me. Where we saw limits, you see possibility. Where we failed to adapt, you adapt instinctively. It is refreshing. Blake smiled faintly. Adaptation's our greatest strength, and our greatest risk. Elrond's tone shifted, a quiet gravity settling over his words. You've thought about what comes next? The transformation isn't finished, Blake. He touched the faint bioluminescent patterns that now laced his irises, symbols of his connection to something far greater than himself. You mean the guardian role? Yes, Elrond said. The network requires a living consciousness to guide its bond with your species. Your mind is compatible, but the final step must be chosen, not taken. Blake looked out over the sprawling facility, the scientists, the engineers, the dreamers, all working under alien light. Theos had changed them. Changed him. What would becoming a guardian mean? He asked quietly. Elrond's form brightened, its voice resonating like wind through crystal. You would retain your identity and free will, but your consciousness would become one with the archives. You would move between worlds, able to appear at any well across Theos. Time would lose its hold. Age would slow. Perception would expand beyond human limits, but... Blake waited. But? You would be bound to Theos, Elrond said. Earth would become distant. Your new perception would make human life, ordinary life, almost unbearable, and you would carry the burden of stewardship for centuries. Blake stood silent, the weight of eternity pressing on his shoulders. He had already sacrificed so much, his normal life, his peace, his very humanity. Yet as he looked upon the well, the archives, and the flickering future they offered, one truth became undeniable. Blake stood at the edge of destiny, torn between two worlds. The one he had come from, full of laughter, fleeting human moments, and the ambitions of a once ordinary archaeologist, and the one before him, luminous and alien, echoing with the voices of a long-dead civilization that refused to be forgotten. Becoming a guardian meant more than transcending human limits. It meant leaving behind the warmth of simple connection, friends, love, the pulse of a life measured in ordinary days. How long do I have to decide? He asked quietly. Elon's spectral form shimmered beside the glowing well. 6 months. After that,
The change becomes permanent. You may still choose, but not without consequence. Blake gazed into the swirling light, where the patterns of the archive seemed to dance like thoughts made visible. Somewhere in that shifting rhythm lay humanity's future, fragile, radiant, and full of peril. He could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on him. Theos had fallen because it reached too far without wisdom. Now humanity stood at the same precipice, holding both salvation and ruin in its hands. "I need time," he murmured, "and I need to understand what this truly means." "As it should be," Elon replied. "The choice must come from within." Then the being faded, leaving Blake alone beneath the twin suns of Theos. Their golden light spilled across the research site, glinting off instruments and scaffolding, symbols of both progress and restraint. Humanity's first true alliance with another civilization had begun, and its future would be written not in conquest, but in understanding. Blake turned from the well, the air around him still humming faintly with unseen power. Whatever path he chose, he knew one truth beyond doubt: knowledge was not the enemy, it was the mirror, and what humanity saw in that reflection, arrogance or wisdom, would decide whether it endured. As he walked back toward the glowing horizon, the line between man and myth blurred. Blake Turner, once a seeker of relics, had become one himself, the living bridge between two civilizations, and the fragile hope that history, this time, would not repeat. Theos had chosen him, but the choice was still his to make.